I just had to increase my iCloud storage, by the way, just because I'm like, there's so much on my computer at this point. Okay, so we'll give it a couple seconds and then we'll get started, and you'll know when to jump in, Henry. We'll prompt you. Welcome back to another episode of the Workplace Wanderers, plural now, lessons from the experts. I'm Blake Cohen, here with
Kara Kirby.
Kara. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
This is our first recording post TEDx. And
Yes.
there's a lot to catch you up on, but we could save that for another time because we have an awesome guest today that I think the topic is going to unfold over time. But to me, what I picked out of it was really training your replacements and the leader's duty to build people up and empower people who work under us, and not to live in that fear that they're going to leave, but really to do our best and serve the people that we work with. So, Henry Lucas, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Good to see you again, Blake. It's been a while, and good to see you, Kara, for the first time.
Well, so I know you, but I would like the audience to get a little glimpse into who you are. As always, I always ask our guests to give their own bio because I feel it is more inclusive to do it that way. We oftentimes submit these bios to things like podcast or for public speaking, and then someone reads it and we go, who the hell is that person? And we don't feel like that person that day. So I want to live in the moment with you and tell me who you are today, what matters to you.
Yeah. So I think the first thing I'll start with is I'm a survivor of the opioid crisis. I've been in active recovery for nearly 17 years, which means for me, I haven't used any opiates and I haven't used any alcohol. And a few years, it'd be like 2 decades,
Wow.
which is insane. Yeah.
Amazing.
I live in Bardstown, Kentucky, which is the bourbon capital of the world, which is ironic, um,
Love that you
which is
mentioned that.
about an hour south of the big city of Louisville, Kentucky. I'm owner and founder of Louisville Health and Healing, which is an outpatient mental health group. I'm the president of the Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition and certified psychedelic assisted psychotherapist. I don't know, the list goes on and on. The two things I think that are most important for me is that I'm in long-term recovery and how that's really transformed my whole life, and that I'm a husband and a father of three wonderful kids. Right now, they're wonderful because they're all at school. So,
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure of meeting your family, and I believe two of your kids. I don't think the third had arrived.
not one. Yeah,
One,
you only
only
met one.
one.
Yeah,
Oh my
only
gosh.
one. Yeah.
Well, she was so incredible that I remember her as two. Um, yeah, I mean, it's your recovery journey, I think, has been very inspiring to me and to many others, and you've always been very open about it. And we've talked about recovery and addiction and substance use out in the workplace a number of times on this podcast. And Kara and I have dove into that topic quite a bit. And Kara,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but it's an area that interests you quite a bit.
Yeah, I think like when Blake and I decided to join forces on this, I just so that you know, Henry, I decided to go alcohol free almost 2.5 years ago. And it was such an interesting experience of how much clarity I had in my daily life. And I mean, there's so much to add to that list that might sound silly to someone who hears these stories all day long, but I couldn't believe the kind of transformation it made just by like taking one substance out of my life. And it just made me, I don't have it figured out yet, but there is this connection between like living cleanly and leadership and being able to like understand people and be present with them. And I think we're going to figure it out through some of these conversations, because usually the worlds are separated, right? Like you have the
Yeah.
recovery world over here, and then you have the leadership and business world over here. And there's not usually a lot of overlap, but I think that there is.
Mhm.
And I don't know what it means yet, but that's part of this journey, is figuring out like how the two worlds can help each other.
Yeah.
I think it's intention. It's living with intention. It's
Mm,
living with commitment and staying committed to something as small or as big and being unwavering in that commitment and finding any way possible to make it through the most difficult times. I know for me, that's what my recovery has shown me and really how that's translated into business, which has really been a saving grace a lot of times when I've wanted to quit, walk away. We know some things that happen in the brain around the mid-singular cortex and like what that really does as far as a grit and resiliency and developing, the strength to persevere during times when we feel like giving up. So yeah, it's in a way it's kind of given recovery and active addiction has really given me a superpower in business that I don't know a whole lot of other people that naturally sort of have that.
Yeah.
So I'm allowing my, recovery to continue to teach me how to translate some of those skills over to business. So it's been a learning experience.
I love that is that it gives you a superpower in business because I think that that's what it is. It's and you could probably and I can't wait to hear all the things you have to teach us about. But yeah, like I want to hear all about the brain. I want to hear about your journey. I want to hear about like what you think about that superpower.
Do you think, Henry, that part of it is also a bit of perspective? Going through most people who are in recovery or who have stopped drinking, it's usually because it's led them to some point in their life where it wasn't working for them anymore and it was starting to become destructive. And I think initially we use substances to either fill some type of hole or gap or as self-medication to help us cope with certain stressors or anxieties that we may have about life or trauma, of course. And it works for a while and then eventually turns on us and starts to kind of contribute to the problem and cause more of the same stressors that we were trying to cope with to begin with. Do you think that coming out on the other side of it, especially 17 years in, there's a gradual sense of perspective that you gain over time and a knowledge of self that you gain over time that helps to translate into business or into let's focus more on leadership actually. It helps you focus more onto being a more present, more attuned leader.
I mean, certainly, someone who's active in their, compulsory use of drugs and alcohol very much has that entrepreneurial spirit.
Mm,
It's like we're gonna figure out how to make this thing work today. I don't have any money. Nobody really wants me around. I'm starting to get sick. So we're gonna really figure out how to get creative, resourceful to figure that out. And I know, I have a lot of ideas all the time, ideas, and I have to be really careful about which ideas to pursue um, because it can become really overwhelming, pretty quick about me wanting to do all the things, that I think about doing,
Yep.
which is it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure that I think I can put on myself, sometimes. So there's a maturity I think that happens when you're with your thoughts long enough, when you're
Mhm.
curious with your thoughts long enough to realize, yeah, that's probably not worth the investment. Or I'm really, really excited about that. I'm not really sure if that thought's gonna, really lead to something, but I'm gonna investigate it a little bit more. Maybe I'll do some research or so it's like a double-edged sword, really,
Yeah.
right? When I think about it. But it's learning, I think, how to harness it so that it's not this sort of free spirited, like wild horse just sort of running to the finish line.
Yes.
It's learning how to train it and how to work with it and maximize it and optimize it in a way that's really, I think, going to serve the greater good, which is,
Yeah.
the community and myself. So
You bring up so many good points there. And I want to just go back real quick to one of the first things you were saying about there's something that I've been doing for years. And I remember watching some documentary and it was listing all the characteristics of billionaires and what made them successful. And I remember watching it going, I was all of those in active addiction. I was all of those, but I just used the powers for bad.
Yeah,
And I turned that into something that I even delivered recently at a treatment center I was speaking at to the clients was letting them know that they're training to become a master and a leader, but they're just not using their powers for good yet. And if they
yeah,
can, there's so much possibility that exists there.
yeah,
But also having to hone in the chaos that comes along with all of that. And a lot of the times it's the reason why people started using substances in the first
yeah,
place was to kind of calm those the chaotic thoughts that are going on down. And I think people mistake the idea of um, stopping using drugs or alcohol. They mistake that as the entire thing. That's it. Just stop
Mm,
using, stop doing this one behavior. And the reality is that there's a lot of self-work that comes along with it to be able to cope with the reasons that you were using the substances in the first place. And once you do that work, which ultimately, whether you have a substance use problem or not, if you want to be successful in business or as a leader, it's highly suggested to do those types of therapeutic work and to get to know yourself and to understand your strengths, your weaknesses, your triggers,
yeah,
uh, your biases, your all of the things that come up that we learn about in recovery. It helps us then be able to utilize those superpowers that we had in active addiction for good. But
yeah.
without
wait,
doing that work, it's hard not to.
like, can
Yeah.
you give me an example?
Of the behaviors, like the
Yeah.
superpowers, um, dedication. You
Okay.
are creative. You are
Risk,
resilient. What's
taking
that?
risk.
Oh my, yeah, risk taking, absolutely. That's a good
That's
one.
such an interesting concept.
Persuasiveness,
Mm.
motivation. I mean,
Sales,
what is it?
sales.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
sales.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
I don't mean
absolutely.
like I don't mean like selling drugs, but right, getting good at like pitching and selling like yourself or your product. You know.
Yeah. Um, I think there's a positive side to also, oftentimes we become chameleons in order to hide our disease in the moment. And I think that can be very devastating to our sense of identity. But at the same time, it helps us sort of meld and mold into different groups of people. And you become really adept at talking to really any kind of person.
Become-
Interesting.
Becoming adaptable,
Adaptable. Yep.
learning how to
Yeah.
pivot, learning how to pivot. I mean, there's just so many, and I don't know, Blake, if I've ever sat back and looked at how much the School of Hard Knocks taught me about business and leadership. Honestly, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such an interesting perspective of like and of like you learn these skills and now how can you use them for good?
You just feel so much shame around them, though, once you get sober, especially in the beginning. You feel a
Mm,
ton of shame because you use them for bad. So I think it's really natural for us to say, I don't have those skills. They were all bad. I want nothing to do with them.
interesting.
And so you have to sort of reconfigure the way your brain is understanding that stuff.
Well, and if you're in a recovery process that requires reflection and introspection, then one of the things you're analyzing is what are my motives,
Mhm.
right? Like where is this coming from? What's driving this desire to get along with everybody,
Yeah.
right? Or what's driving, my need to make myself seem more important than than I really feel about myself,
Mm,
right?
Yeah.
Like, why do what's driving this need to be the loudest one in the room or the one that's, seen or whatever that is. And so I think now that's what I mean when I go back to it being intentional.
Yeah. I think that
right? Is
makes
like
sense.
I have a choice now on where this is going to come from when I show up as an entrepreneur and as a leader.
Yeah.
One of,
You're,
sorry, go ahead, Blake.
no, please go.
One of the concepts that I like to teach inside of whatever leadership curricula that I'm teaching on a certain day is this concept of an outward mindset and of catching yourself of when you have like inside the box thinking, right? Whenever your needs, your challenges, objectives, like those are the things that you're trying to fulfill. And the shift needs to be with leaders is that they could catch that mindset, that intentionality, like you were saying, and shift it to other people. So it's like it's not about like what Kara wants. This is about like what's going on with Henry, what's going on with Blake, and how do I help them meet their goals? And I was just like thinking about that is that there's this that like whenever you like that root of like what drives this need to be important, it's like that shift to get out of your head as well. Like there's a like I'm sure that's almost like a very similar shift that happens in recovery that it happens like in the leadership of like almost like killing your ego, which is what we all kind of need to do inside of this life, in my humble
Mhm.
opinion.
Well, I think there's a number of principles that you're taught to live by in recovery, and a lot of them have to do with integrity, spirituality, service, uh, open-mindedness, honesty, and
Humility,
yeah, humility.
humility. Yeah.
So you take that, a lot of that ends up applying to what you're saying, Kara, where you you get out of self, out of that box
Mm-hmm.
of self, and you start to have to put yourself in other people's shoes and go, okay, am I being of service today? Am I helping others today? Am I being true to myself and true to the people around me today? Am I living with integrity and humility? And it helps you in that sense to become a better leader and to be able to step outside of that box of self.
It's like the principles of recovery and like the principles of like leadership, right?
It's the same thing in a way.
It's
Well, can I tell you that that was why I initially started going for my master's in leadership. That was why I started, was like, I am going to find a way to write the book on how to lead your way out of addiction using leadership principles. And then I just sort of fell in love with the field of organizational psych. So I moved away from that idea. But there's so much overlap there.
wow.
Well, somehow, as usual, we got sidetracked immediately from the topic, but it was interesting. Um, okay, so two things I want to ask you before we actually fully dive into the topic. So you mentioned the Harm Reduction Coalition.
Yeah.
And so can you tell us a little bit about that and what your involvement is?
Yeah. So I'm the president of the board. So Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition. Check us out, kyhrc.org. We just celebrated last year 10 years of providing services throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We were an organization that was started by parents who had lost children to overdose, opiate overdose. And so we were very much a volunteer organization early on, and they would meet in each other's living rooms and basements and gather supplies and donations, and they would take it out to the streets. And since in the last decade, we have distributed over 1 million doses of naloxone, or sometimes better known as the brand name Narcan.
Did you say 1 million?
Since Yeah, since
Wow.
one of the other things we do is we distribute fentanyl test strips throughout the Commonwealth, and in Kentucky, up until like halfway through 2023, they were still illegal. And we still distributed them even though they were illegal. We have distributed well over 1 million fentanyl test strips
Wow.
just in the last few years. Um, let's see, about 8 years ago, we were heavily involved in the first syringe exchange program in Kentucky. We were
Wow.
um, one of the pioneers for that. And then during COVID, we started mail-based distribution throughout the state. So folks can call or they can go to our website and they can order safe using supplies, naloxone, fentanyl test strips, xylazine test strips, anonymously, and we will mail them and ship them out to wherever they're at. That was just kind of a few high level things. Actually, I forgot about this. I'll be going down to Bogota, Colombia, in just a couple weeks to speak at the International Harm Reduction Conference, talking about how to use domestic funding for harm reduction. And one of the cool
Wow.
things we did last year is through one of our partnerships with Vital Strategies, they connected us with contacts at one of the state Medicaid programs, Anthem Insurance, their Medicaid um, part of
Branch.
yeah, the Medicaid branch. And we opened a health and wellness lounge, which is like a drop-in center, and we launched a harm reduction navigation of care where we used other grassroots organizations and we worked with local emergency rooms to divert drug using people away from the ER and to the services that they really needed.
Hmm.
And we gathered some data, and we found that the three biggest needs that participants in that particular program had. The first one was shelter, water, and restroom.
Wow. Basic human
Wow.
needs.
People just want to use the restroom.
Wow.
So, and before we had, before we opened this drop-in center, we were, going around and looking at properties and looking at space, and we saw this space. It's really right where a lot of our participants are. And as we were walking in to just, check out the space, there's feces all over the ground and all around the whole building, and people out there using the restroom. And um now that we have a restaurant that people can come in and use,
Wow.
there's no more feces in the general area. And we've partnered with some other organizations that provide hot meals and provide cold meals, and that provide snack packs and all kinds of other services. And so we're happy to see being able to really serve a portion of some substance use population that mostly get overlooked and dismissed because they're chronic drug users and they're transient, and most of them have HIV or hepatitis C and so many other co-occurring comorbidities. So that's a little bit about the harm reduction. So
What's I can only imagine with everything that you're doing, which is all incredible work. That's all so needed and serving a community that needs it in an unbelievable way. I can only imagine, and I'm wondering what kept you driving forward because I know there is a very strong response that people have to the idea of harm reduction. And a lot of communities don't want their dollars spent or, as they say, wasted on these types of services for people who are struggling. How much of that blowback did you all feel? And two, how did you persevere through that? Or how did you stay mission and value driven as you're providing these services despite the noise?
well, even more recently, just in the last few months, we were awarded $100,000 grant from the CDC, and before we could even spend $1 out of that, it was taken away from us
Mm.
due to the current
Oh,
administration. So the short answer is f your feelings. I think emotions and feelings are important, but this is one of those things where if you look at the data, if you look at the information, if you look at the science and the literature, which is not driven by emotion, it's all right there.
Mm.
All it all shows you that like syringe exchange services dramatically reduce communicable disease, right?
Hmm.
Infectious disease, HIV, hepatitis, and the thing about Kentucky, over the last handful of years, we seem to be not seem we are at the top of the list for HIV transmission,
Wow.
hepatitis C transmission, right? So my thing is, we got to take our feelings out of it. We have to take our judgment out of it. We have to take our opinion out of it. There's a place for that, but not when folks out in our community are dying, not when folks out in our community really have no place to go, you know. So that's my whole thing is like, let's just take the feelings out of it and let's just keep it solely based off the evidence that science has presented on something like harm reduction over the last 30 or 40 years. But it's really interesting because our whole society is built on the principles of harm reduction, right?
How
It's
so?
like, well, I brush my teeth. That's harm reduction. I've lost my little teeth. That's harm reduction. I go to the
Okay.
dentist. I go to the dentist. That's harm reduction. The dentist says you got a cavity. Instead of actually pulling the tooth out, we're gonna, drill it out. We're gonna put, whatever they put in there. We're gonna fill that cavity. That's harm reduction, right? A handrail going upstairs. That's harm reduction.
Hmm.
Your seatbelt. That's harm reduction,
Yeah.
right? So much of our society is harm reduction, but when it comes to a population that we don't really tolerate and that we can't stand to even look at, the principles of harm reduction do not apply.
Hmm.
Mm.
And so we hold people to the standard that they'll never be able to achieve in the current state that they're in, right?
Yeah. Wow. Uh, It
Oh,
sounds like a lot of the resistance is based on just pure ignorance of the science and of the data and of maybe some other driving factor. I mean, there's a lot of confirmation bias that occurs in that world too. People are seeing, they see one needle on the street or, three needles, four needles on the street, and they say, look, this is what a needle exchange does. There's needles on the street now, and they don't realize how many lives those needles may have saved. So I'd imagine it's a lot of ignorance. So is part of this coalition, and it sounds like you're going to a conference all about it, but I'd imagine everybody who's at that conference is already educated on the importance of it. They're not going because they're interested. They're going because they're in that world. Um, I'd imagine a lot of what you're doing is education.
We do a fair bit of education, yeah, because there's so much stigma and there's so much shame, so much confusion around it. Um, I mean, it's just interesting to live in such a great country at times, and not everybody really has the same opportunity
Mhm.
because of so many factors, right? That they're going up against, and I'll share just what I think is a real beautiful story. We have a participant that um, came through, our program and was houseless, and he showed us, pictures of where he was staying. He kind of collected um, a bunch of material over time and built his own little shack. And we gave him a job.
mm.
And from that, he was able to connect with other resources. So he doesn't live in a shack anymore. He has an apartment.
Wow.
And he was able to stop drinking alcohol. And he's wanting to get back in school.
Oh my gosh.
All because someone gave him a chance. You can work. You don't have to be sober really to work here. Like we need something to wake up for, in the morning. We're going to wake up for something,
Hmm.
right? And it's like we all have to feel like we have a place here. Like we all have to feel like we're contributing to something, right? Or we're going to contribute to something anyways.
Yeah.
Could be self-destruction or it could be construction. It could be building something up or tearing something down.
Hmm.
And I think that recovery may have taught me that. It could have been growing up poor. It could have been a whole lot of reasons, but I solely believe in giving people a chance that may not get an opportunity otherwise.
Yeah.
And when I do that, I am amazed and baffled time and time again at how people will always rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
That's my experience.
Kara, I'm noticing that you're getting emotional.
It's just, I mean, it's just so beautiful. You're just such a leader. I'm like, I feel like I'm like inspired to be in your presence right now. I just want you to know that. It's just so interesting how our society can, um, dehumanize people so easily. And especially like what's been happening. I mean, I feel like I'm so uneducated. I can't talk on this. I just like watch documentaries, but it's like it's like people go into the doctor because their leg is hurt. They end up like getting in these. I mean, it's just crazy what's happening with like, especially like the opioids out there. Like, I mean, it just drives me crazy. And, and yeah, it's just inspirational to hear all the things that you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. And it's really, truly all rooted in service.
Mm-hmm.
And
I,
it's what keeps you
I
coming
realized,
back.
yeah, while I realized a couple of years ago, um, when I think about the people I get the opportunity to work with, um, that yeah, I think like the old way of leading is you give someone a fish, right? And this is gonna sound biblical, and it is what it is. I love the analogy. You just give them a fish, and like they're happy, they've got it. They're no longer hungry, and they're satisfied. And that's not good enough for me. Like I want to teach people I want to teach them how to fish,
Mm.
Yeah.
right? And and that's the world that I live in. That's the world that I create is to teach people how to create what they want for themselves.
Yeah. Creating
It's
opportunity.
really
Can,
inspiring.
Okay, Henry, can you started telling us a story earlier and I asked
Yeah.
you to stop because I wanted
Okay.
this to be on recording, but can you tell us about how you are diabolical with the people that you work with? Wahaha.
So in 2021, I started Louisville Health and Healing, which is an outpatient mental health practice. We have 4 locations, and we see a lot of clients, and it's been really incredible just to see the work that we can do together. And I thought, coming out of 2020, I thought that like, well, yeah, there's going to be this crisis, and one good skill that a leader has is they can forecast and they can see things happen before they happen. And I seen this, and it was based off of how crazy I felt in 2020. It's like I know I'm not the only one.
Mm.
My neighbors are ordering takeout and they're washing down their takeout containers outside with hand sanitizer. Like I can't believe we are believing this, and no disrespect to anybody that did that if that is what you had to do to feel safe. But we were all coming a bit unhinged. It's like, is this the way that it's going to be? Like I remember being at the store and looking down and it'd say like 6 feet you stand here, and I remember looking up and seeing the person 6 feet in front of me and like feeling like just grief of like, oh my gosh, like I'm being disconnected from people. Like this does not feel like natural. Like my body's resisting this.
Mm.
So I started this Louisville Health and Healing, and I thought it was for clients. And it just hit me maybe like 5 months ago. A friend and colleague of mine, who was my clinical director here, she actually took a job as a director of services at one of the mental health addiction facilities here, which is which is kind of a big deal, really. And she deserves it. And one of the things that she said to me, as we were like meeting and giving feedback, and we're just crying, and it was just really sweet. A few weeks of just being in space together, right? And she says, "Louisville Health and Healing, the place where therapists go and heal." And I was like, "That's it." Like, I created this as an opportunity for other people to see that they have it. Like, they can receive the training, they can receive the information, they can kind of go through some difficult, challenging times to see that they have what it takes to be great. And this was a few months ago, and then it hit me like one of these ideas that I was talking about earlier. The concept therapy school came out. Therapy school. So I launched therapy school just a couple of weeks ago, and it's really more of a, I think, concrete, real version of what I've been creating without really having any concept, guiding. And so therapy school is a true two-track program. The first part is the externship, and you can come and you work, you get paid, and you learn everything you need to learn about therapy and the business side of it. And when you're ready to go, you leave and you transition with a full-time caseload into your own business.
Wow.
Wow.
And it's like, well, who's doing that? That is
Nobody.
not a good business. That's not good business. The the other track is called the Private Practice Accelerator, and it's a 6 month high intensity weekly 90-minute coaching with me directly. And not only that, but you'll meet other experts throughout the 6 months. Like, we'll have attorneys talking about the legal side of things and liability and risk, things like consent, privacy. We'll meet with the marketing expert who could talk about, how to brand your private practice, how to reach, a particular audience. And we'll meet with, experts from finance and accounting, so you know what bookkeeping and those sort of things look like. And I had a call actually today with a therapist who's been at the company it'll be 3 years in the next few months. And she quit her job, full-time salary job, being an in-school therapist, to at the time she says it was taking a risk on me. I mean, she couldn't see it was really investing 3 years ago into herself. And so we get on a call, and she says, I'm leaving. And I could see she's a nervous wreck. I'm like, oh wow, that's great, congratulations. And I can see her just kind of like getting more calm, and it brought me a lot of joy to hear her talk about her office and
Oh.
decorating and her website and the clients that she's going to work with. And she says, well, yeah, August, I'll be out in August stuff. And I made sure to circle back, and I want to get really clear. You have to let me know a specific day in August. It's important that when we're chasing our dreams, it's important that we're very clear and very specific about what we want, or we're likely to self-sabotage, even
Hmm.
when we don't want to. And you know, she's really grateful and thank you for the opportunity. And I learned, so much, and that's it for me. I can go ahead and retire now. Now I won't, because I still have a career to go. But like, I mean, that is so much more satisfying as a leader than sitting behind some spreadsheet, saying we got to drive the numbers up. Could the business be more profitable? Sure, but that's not what I'm doing here, right? Like, I'm creating wealth and I'm creating profit beyond the sense of a dollar amount, beyond the sense of productivity. One therapist, before she came to work at the practice, 40-hour week salary job, which paid less than what she makes now. And in that 40 hours a week, she had to see 40 clients. So every hour was a client. So notes, responding to emails, all of that was outside of that window of 40 hours. Full time for me is actually 27 hours a week. And what I've found is, we talk about work-life balance, but what I found that balance actually drives up productivity, right? Balance, and I know you know a lot about that, Blake. I can see you smiling. Like,
I think we
I've done my
both do.
research.
I mean, it's such an obvious statement, but it's
Hmm.
so rarely followed.
Yeah.
And culture, we've been nominated, and the results haven't been out yet. We've been nominated for best place to work. I think we'll get it. I think probably next month or two the results will come
Wow.
out. But like, it even does so much for the culture, and that's attractive. You might be familiar with this, Blake. It's attraction rather than promotion,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, most of the, if not all of the people that currently work in my company, um, let me say maybe 90% of them, have all been attracted to the company somehow. Maybe it was through a colleague or someone who's already working here. Um, and it's really incredible. And
And
now at
it,
this point, a little over 4 years, it's really taken a life of its own.
yeah,
Congratulations. That's
yeah,
amazing.
really, congratulations. And I want to stop you for 1 second just to explain the attraction rather than promotion thing.
Yeah.
Just for anybody who's never been involved in Care for You, like who's never been involved in a 12-step program. So that's one of the principles or guiding thoughts of it, is that people are very much turned off by promotion, especially when it
Mm.
comes to something like a 12-step program, going out there and promoting. So there is no promoting structure. It's basically you attract people to it by being a living, breathing example of what the program can do.
Interesting. My mind goes to organizational development because it's the same thing with organizations. And I think it's like what you're referring to as well. And I just didn't know the connection, but if you have a great organization, you have a great culture, people are going to be clamoring to get inside that
Right.
organization. So you're going to end up getting the best talent just because of what you've created on the inside versus companies that have to spend so much money, like on recruitment and doing all these different things to try to get employees into the door.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting how there's a juxtaposition in those concepts too.
Yeah, you're selling through being, essentially.
Hmm.
You're getting
Yeah,
people to come in and, you know, I think it's a really powerful motivator because it's proof of people that people are walking the walk and talking the talk. And I think that's what people
totally.
really want to see. There's that consistency in what they're seeing. So wait, so
And
Henry, oh, go ahead, Kara.
no, I was just
Uh,
gonna say it's very, very hard to artificially create that. Like it
Yeah,
has to be authentic.
yeah,
yeah, and what I'm really, at the end of the day, what I'm most concerned with is the quality of the experience,
Hmm.
from everybody that's involved to clients that reach out and seek services, community partners, the clinicians. It's all about quality. It's not about quantity.
yeah.
When we
Well,
scale, when we scale as business, we lose density. And so that magical feeling that we wish we could put in a bottle, that's that's a personal responsibility. Like that's a personal investment. And we naturally lose that anytime that we scale or anytime that we grow. And I don't want to lose that. It's just too magical.
yeah.
Yeah. I wish that was coveted in more organizations, or they even had that language to know how to covet what that is.
Yeah.
Well, the end is the end result, right? It's an end game. It's an end result. And
Mm,
so it's not focused on right now, what do we have? Like, how's the quality? How's the heart? How's the soul? It's can we run this in the least amount of possible to make the most amount of possible to maybe at some point sell it, right? Or to drive up profits so that our stakeholders are taken care of. And it's just a tragedy to see how many of us that work in the mental health space have really been exploited. No one wants
Yeah.
to
mm,
know one side about what insurance pays and what people are reimbursed at these places.
mm.
A clinician has seen 40. Let me just do the math real quick because it's insane. And part
I
of
cannot even imagine like 40 hours of just that kind of deep, just mental work every single week. Like I'm
Well,
sure people are burning out every 5 seconds.
and you know who suffers ultimately in the end are the patients being seen. How can you truly
Yeah.
be an
I just
effective
did the math,
clinician?
I just did the math on a 40-hour week. Like if this person saw 40 clients a week at the lowest reimbursement, and she was making maybe 40 or $45,000 a year, they're bringing in almost $173,000 worth of revenue. And that,
Wow.
and that person is only getting paid like 1/6.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That's wild. Listen, Henry, I know you got to go.
Yeah,
So I want to thank you for this deep conversation. I feel like it was almost spiritual in a sense, like it felt very deep. Um, it sounds like to me the therapy school is your brainchild of bottling up whatever juiciness that you have at the Louisville Health and Healing Center. It sounds like you're trying to be intentional and bottle up that leadership and give people a way forward as a clinician. And you're teaching them the things that unfortunately they don't learn in traditional schooling. So I think that is incredible. I think that is amazingly giving of you. And if I didn't already like you before this, I certainly love you now.
yeah, I feel the same.
Oh man, Henry, thank you so much. This has been like the highlight of my week. And I will say from my world, if it's okay to tell you, even though it's like inconsequential compared to the amazing work that you do, but I find that like so much difference can be made in businesses by a positive example. So when other businesses are seeing even, they're seeing an organization operate and the results and the amazing things that come out of that organization, it actually inspires so many more people to change their processes. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for running your business in the way that you do, because you're making more of an impact than I hope you know, but more than you realize.
Thank you for the kind words, Kara, and it was nice to meet you. And there are a lot of lonely nights, and there's a lot of days where I second guess, myself, and if this is really the way to do it. And so, thank you for really being a light along the path for me today.
Absolutely. And you just call us if you ever have those days, and we will hype you right the back up. Okay.
That's
Yo, yo,
right.
yo, yo.
Yeah.
I
All right, Henry. Well,
hope.
thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank you,
everybody who
Henry.
listened. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. There's once again tons of great nuggets that I think everybody can learn from. So please enjoy this episode. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can listen into wherever you listen to your podcast. Like, comment, heart, whatever. Bye, everyone.
See ya.